And a half remaining in the third quarter. The Oilers 6 yards away from a tie. It is Renfro. Touchdown. Or is it? Out of play. A late call. The official did not make any signal. And now apparently has said no touchdown. An instant replay would be important.
Let's see if the feet come down. Now he's got the ball. He does clearly get inside.
It is a touchdown.
No question about it.
It was not called one, but there's no doubt that was a Houston touchdown.
Well, they haven't made a final decision in the end zone. They're still down there talking about it. Now, there's no question about this. He's got control. He has both feet down clearly in the end zone.
What's up, Car Family? How's everybody doing tonight? So, for those that don't know, that was the 1979 AFC Championship game. And a lot of people call that game the Mike Renfro game. Mike Renfro, he was a smallish, sort of a slot type receiver. Started off with the Oilers. And in the 79 AFC Championship, this was the Love You Blue era for the Houston Oilers. Earl Campbell days, really, really good team. And they had gotten destroyed by the Steelers the previous year in the AFC Championship, 34-5. And in that particular game, the Steelers, it was one of these games where the Steelers were winning the game, in total yardage and that sort of thing. But the Oilers were staying in the game. And it was 17-10 at the time, late in the third quarter. And as you could see in the video, they hit Mike Renfro in the back of the end zone on a fade. He caught what appeared to be a touchdown, and they called the play, not a catch. And replay went back, and they didn't have replay then. But the replay showed it appeared he caught the ball, and had he caught the ball, would have been a game-tying touchdown. The Oilers went on to lose the game 27-13. They kicked the field goal on that possession and lost the game 27-13. Steelers went on to the Super Bowl, won their fourth Super Bowl. I just thought it was interesting, and that was the completion of the Steelers' legacy, those 4 Super Bowls in the 70s, and that's how they got there. And I'm not saying it was tainted or anything like that. Calls happen all the time, but just a little nugget there, so to speak. And I think those people that have heard of Renfro probably know him because of that. I know him and knew of him because he would later become a receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. And as a kid, when you're watching these guys play, like Renfro was not a big time ton of catches receiver, but he made some plays here and there. And as a kid, he was one of my favorite players. And I don't think you realize, hey, this guy was a role player. He was definitely a role player. But so I found out that he TTM'd, so I wanted to send him a card and a photo. So I did, and they came back, and in all honesty, they're probably not the best TTMs that I've ever gotten. But this is his 86 tops, and I sent this. This was his best year as a Dallas Cowboy. You can see 60 catches, 955 yards, 8 touchdowns. Him and Tony Hill were the 1-2 punch for the Cowboys that year. And this was the last Tom Landry team to make the playoffs. And there's Renfro's auto. I guess I didn't think it out too well. There wasn't a lot of choices in a Cowboys uniform, but the blue on the blue, makes his auto kind of hard to see. He went to Texas Christian, drafted by the Oilers, but he's one of these guys, and the Cowboys have had a lot of these guys over the years, that he was just a perfect kind of like classic Cowboy, right? So I sent a 5x7 also. And again, I guess I didn't think this through. This would have looked fantastic with silver ink, but he signed it, and I don't know if this is, I guess, blue or black, but you can see it says, "To Scott, best to you, Mike Renfro, 82. And there's a photo of him catching a touchdown versus the Giants. So this is how I'm going to do my TTMs now. I'm sending them a photo and a card. I guess I really need to think about, what color ink I'm using. But this is kind of what a direction I want to go with my TTMs and my videos, to talk a little bit about the players, about the history, about my thoughts about him and my memories of Mike Renfro, and mine are two. The first one is this particular year, 85 was. I remember Renfro catching a long touchdown against the Giants, and heck, that could be it for all I know, to clinch the NFC East that year. And I remember him having a big year. Secondly, was Thanksgiving Day, 1987, Week 12, Thanksgiving Day, 1987, and the Cowboys were playing the Vikings on Thanksgiving Day. This was one of the Thanksgiving was always right around my birthday. It's always been a huge game for me as a Cowboys fan. And this was one of the few games where me and my family stayed home. So I remember eating my turkey dinner in my room and watching this game, and it was an absolute shootout. The Cowboys had Herschel Walker. They still felt like this team, like to me, they weren't that far removed from being, this amazing, great team, but they really weren't. But, when they played in this game against a great team like the Vikings, they were right there. And in this particular game, Renfro caught 3 touchdowns. So you'll see on that second touchdown that Renfro caught, Joey Browner grabbed him and pulled him out of the end zone. And Joey Browner was a fantastic all-pro safety for the Minnesota Vikings. And I remember that moment of Browner dragging Renfro out of the end zone. That touchdown got the Cowboys within 7. And, I remember hating Joey Browner and hating the Vikings and hating Anthony Carter. And so check out Renfro on his 3rd touchdown. So as you can see, Renfro caught that 3rd touchdown. He turned around, he spiked the ball right in Joey Browner's face. And, man, I remember that moment. And as a kid, you see something like that. And, man, Renfro was my hero. He was my hero that day. And just one of my all-time favorite Cowboys. The Cowboys went on to that. They tied it at 38. That game went to overtime, and they end up losing 44-38. Darren Nelson for the Vikings popped a long touchdown run. Renfro finished that game. It was 7 catches, 100 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Danny White threw for 340 yards and 4 touchdowns. To me, that was kind of the end of an era. That was kind of that Danny White's last hurrah. Tony Dorsett was on the team. He barely played. It wasn't long after the following year, or maybe no, I don't think it was the next year, or was it? Let's see. Give me 1 second. Yeah, so the following year, Dallas went 3-13. They were 7-8 that year. It was a strike year, but then they went 3-13. That was it for Tom Landry. They ended up trading Herschel Walker, and the rest is history. But that was kind of the end of an era for me and the end of my childhood. I know that didn't probably make a lot of sense to people, but Mike Renfro, huge part of kind of my Dallas Cowboys history and where I came from. So super cool to get these autographs from him and kind of just share the story. I don't know. I just want to share stuff like that. The story of my life as a Cowboys fan, and it obviously we haven't won anything in over 20 years, but it never was always about wins. And you lose a game and people are like, oh, where them boys at? Where them Cowboys fans at? Man, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm personally not going anywhere. I'll be a Cowboys fan as long as the Cowboys are in existence and that I'm here. So yeah, this is what being a true fan is all about. And yeah, so that's all I got. Appreciate y'all watching. Keep it real. I'm out. So I thought this was pretty cool. I started looking around on the internet and looking at Renfro's game logs, and I actually found the actual video from where this catch came from. This photo came from. It's 1986, Week 9, Cowboys against the Giants. I remember this game well. Cowboys were 6-2 going into it. Had a really good team that year. We're having a great year. And this is a game Danny White got hurt, and they would only win one more game the rest of the year. So talking about kind of the end of a legacy, this was really the game, the end of the legacy right here. And White had already gotten hurt when Renfro caught this pass. He actually caught it from Steve Pallor. So check this out.
Is a rookie that they're going to work on. And of course, they have the old veteran Mike Renfro. He just gets inside. Now, once he gets inside, Collins didn't get his hands on him. He has him beaten down there. When you get down inside that...
So there you saw it. That's a little bit after this photo was taken. But there you go. That was the play right there. So pretty cool to get him to autograph that photo. Appreciate y'all watching. Keep it real.